Welcome back to another episode of Her Take by Laila Jean Yu Says. I'm your host, Laila, and today we're getting to something that is very personal to me, and I mean very personal, because this is a conversation about identity, about ownership, about the radical and apparently very threatening idea that a black woman specifically, is allowed to be the main character of her own fucking life. Not a supporting character, not a co-star, not the person standing in someone else's spotlight holding their coat while they shine. The main character in her own story, in her own reality, in her own spotlight. And today we are going to talk about why that simple idea, a woman choosing herself, owning her own spotlight, and refusing to dim her spotlight for anyone, makes so many people deeply fucking uncomfortable. And we are going to use a very specific example to make it real. Because sometimes the abstract needs a face. In this case, that face belongs to Lori Harvey. I know y'all don't like her, but we're going to discuss her. So carry on. Let me start by defining what I actually mean when I say main character energy. Because I think a lot of people hear that phrase and immediately assume it means selfishness, arrogance, not caring about anyone else. That is not what it means. At least not in the way I live it. Main character energy means understanding that in your 4D reality, your life, your experience, your story, you are the protagonist. You are the one whose journey matters most. You are the one making the decisions, experiencing the consequences, doing the growing, doing the healing, doing the becoming. Everybody else in your life, the people you love, the people you work with, the people you date, they are a part of your story, but they are not the center of it. You are. And here is what people get confused. Being the main character of your own life does not mean you do not support other people. It does not mean you do not show up for the people you love. It basically means that while you're cheering for everyone and supporting everyone else and celebrating everyone else, you do not forget that you also have a spotlight. You also have a story. You also have a journey that deserves your full attention and your full investment. And here's the thing, I do not share my spotlight, not because I'm selfish, but because this particular motherfucking spotlight shines on my light, in my path, in my purpose. It belongs to me. It belongs to Laila. It was built by me. It was earned by me. And I refuse to dim my spotlight for anybody else because they feel uncomfortable. I don't give two fucks. That is a you problem. Everybody has their own spotlight. Everybody has their own 4D reality. I will show up in yours and celebrate you fully. But when it is my time to shine, I'm not dimming it for anybody. Not for you, not for Jesus, definitely not for anybody, definitely not my motherfucking man. And the fact that the statement makes people uncomfortable, especially when it comes from a woman, it tells you everything about the world we are living in. So I want you to sit with these questions before we move on. What is the difference between main character energy and selfishness? Have you ever dimmed your spotlight to make someone else feel more comfortable? What did it cost you? Why does a woman claiming her own main character energy feel threatened to the people around her? So let's talk about why this concept makes people feel so uncomfortable, because the discomfort is real and is worth examining. When a woman says, I'm the main character energy of my own life, I am the center of my own story, I'm not dimming my spotlight for anyone, there is a very specific reaction that happens, especially from men. But honestly, from certain women too. The reaction is discomfort, sometimes anger, sometimes mockery. She thinks she's all that. She is full of herself. She is too much. Sounds familiar? And I want to ask, why? Why does a woman owning her own story feel like a threat? I think it's because for a very long time, for most of recorded history, women have been written into other people's stories. The wife in the husband's stories, the mother in the children's stories, the girlfriend in the boyfriend's stories. The supporting character who exists to validate, nurture, enable, and elevate the main character, who is always a man. And that arrangement works for a lot of people. It is comfortable. It is familiar. It is what was modeled. It is what was normalized. But when a woman steps out of that arrangement, when she says, actually, I am not here to be a supporting character in your motherfucking story, I'm here to be the main character in my own story, it pretty much disrupts everything. It challenges an assumption that was deeply embedded that most people did not even know they were making it. The assumption that a woman's story is always a service of someone else's story. And men specifically feel threatened by the main character energy in women because it means they are no longer automatically the center of the narrative. It means a woman who's living in her main character energy is not going to prioritize their comfort over their own. And also, she's not going to dim her light so they can shine brighter. Is not going to shrink herself to make the relationship feel more balanced. And that is threatening, not because it is wrong, but because it is new. And new things are always threatening to people who are comfortable with the old arrangement. So let me ask you a question before we move on. Why has the default narrative always placed women as supporting characters in someone else's story? Why do men specifically feel threatened when a woman claims her own main character energy? What would relationship look like if both people fully owned their main character energy without one having to dim for the other? So let's talk about the Lori Harvey effect. Yes, we are talking about Lori Harvey. Since y'all like to say she's for the streets and that she fumbled Michael B. Jordan, let's get into it. Because Lori Harvey is a living proof of everything I have been saying. For those who need context, Lori Harvey and Michael B. Jordan were in a relationship, a very public relationship. Michael B. Jordan is one of the most celebrated and desired men in Hollywood right now. Talented, successful, fine. By every conventional measure, he is what society tells women they should be looking for. And Lori Harvey walked away. She was approximately 25 or 26 years old at the time, and she ended the relationship. And the internet absolutely lost its mind. Now, we don't know what happened in relationship between her and Michael B. Jordan. It's all speculation and rumors. But what we know is that she ended the relationship for a specific reason. And people are saying that she fumbled. She is for the streets. She's going to regret this. She threw away the perfect man. She is going to end up alone. These are the things that I've been hearing and reading on Beyonce's internet. As I sat down and read these responses and these comments, I thought to myself, did it ever occur to any of you that she chose herself? Did it ever occur to you that maybe she lost her identity in that relationship? That maybe being Michael B. Jordan's girlfriend was consuming who Lori Harvey actually is as a person? That maybe she looked at where that relationship was heading, marriage, children, a life built around his career and his image, and said, that is not my story. Did it ever occur to you that maybe she did not want to be a wife at 25, or that maybe she did not want to be a mother at 25, that maybe she wanted to find out who Lori Harvey is when she is not somebody's girlfriend? Because here's the thing about being in a relationship with someone who has a bigger platform and a bigger public profile than you, to become an appendage of their identity rather than fully realize the person in your own right. To find yourself dimming your spotlight consciously, unconsciously, because their spotlight is so bright. And Lori Harvey decided she was not going to do that. She chose herself. She chose her own story. She chose her own spotlight. And the world called it a fumble. Let me ask you a question. Why do we use the word fumble when a woman ends a high-profile relationship? What does the word reveal about how we see women's choices? Is it possible that Lori Harvey made the most self-aware and self-honoring decision of her life? Have you ever seen a relationship past expiration date because leaving would have felt like a fumble to the people watching? Now let's talk about the parasocial problem. And I want to talk about something that is connected to everything we have been discussing. The parasocial relationship problem. Because a huge part of why people reacted so strongly to Lori Harvey ending that relationship is that they were not actually invested in Lori Harvey's happiness. They were invested in the narrative, in the story they have built in their heads about Michael B. Jordan and Lori Harvey as a couple, and what a relationship represented to them as observers. They had a parasocial investment in a relationship that had nothing to do with them. And when the relationship ended, they felt like something was taken from them. And that is a parasocial problem when we have become invested in other people's relationship in other people's story that we feel entitled to have opinions about their choices. When we feel like a celebrity's breakup is a personal affront to us, when we take it upon ourselves to decide what another person should have done with their own life, their own heart, and their own future. Lori Harvey does not owe you a fucking relationship. She damn sure don't owe you a love story. She does not owe you a wedding or a baby, or a continuation of a narrative that you decided was your favorite. She owes herself a life that feels true to who she is. And she chose that. And I have deep respect for that choice. I also want to say is that just because you have views about what a relationship should be and what it should look like, may not be the same realistic mindset that Lori Harvey has. I feel as though as a society that we need to stop judging people's decision and stop telling them what to do their life if it doesn't feel fit our narrative. Anyways, carry on. Because choosing yourself, especially when the whole world is watching and calling it a fumble, is one of the hardest things a person can do. It requires knowing who you are. It requires trusting yourself more than you trust the crowd. And it requires being willing to be misunderstood and mislabeled and judged. And Lori Harvey did that in public at 25 years old. That is not a fumble. That is main character energy at its finest. So I want you to sit with these questions. What is a parasocial relationship and how does it affect the way we judge celebrities and personal choices? Why do we feel entitled to have opinions about other people's romantic decisions, especially when those people are a stranger to us? What does it mean to choose yourself in a situation where the whole world is telling you that you are making a mistake? Now, I want to get specific because this conversation about main character energy and choosing yourself hits differently when you are a Black woman. Because Black women have been told so many ways, overly and subtly, that our spotlight is not really ours, that our story is always in service of someone else's story, that our strength exists to carry other people, that our light exists to illuminate other people's paths. We are told to be strong to our families, to show up for our communities, to support our men, to raise our children, to hold everything together, to never break, to never need, to never choose ourselves over someone else's needs. And when a Black woman says, actually, no, this is my spotlight, this is my story, I'm not, I am the main character energy, and I'm not dimming my spotlight for anyone. The reaction is almost always the same. She is selfish. She's difficult. She has an attitude. She thinks she's better than everyone. She's going to end up alone. And I want to say it very clearly and directly, none of that is true. All of that is designed to get you back into your supporting role. Because here's what I know. You are the main character of your own reality. Not because you are better than anyone else, not because other people do not matter, but because this is your life. Your one life. And you are the only one who has to live it. And you do not have to share your spotlight with anyone who has not earned a place in it. You damn sure don't have to dim your light to make someone else feel comfortable. You do not have to make yourself smaller so that the relationship feels more balanced. You do not have to choose someone else's story over your own. You are allowed to be the main character energy, fully, unapologetically, without explanation and without apology. And if that threatens someone, if someone looks at you fully inhibiting your own story and it feels threatened by it, that is information. That is them telling you that you needed to be small, that you needed to dim your spotlight, that they needed you to be supporting character in their story because they could not handle you being the star of your own. And that is not someone who deserves a place in your spotlight. So let me ask you something. Why are Black women specifically told that choosing themselves is selfish? What would it look like to fully inhabit your main character energy without apology? If someone is threatened by your spotlight, what does that tell you about whether they belong in your story? So here is where I land on all of this. Lori Harvey did not fumble. She chose herself, and that choice made it publicly at 25 in the middle of a relationship the whole world was watching, was one of the most powerful expression of main character energy I have ever seen. She decided that her spotlight was worth protecting, even if it meant walking away from something that looked perfect from the outside. And that is what main character energy actually looks like. Not the aesthetic, not the TikTok trend, the real thing. Let's try this again. The real thing. This is my 4D reality, and nobody else gets to write my story. Nobody gets to get my spotlight unless they have earned it. Nobody gets to dim my spotlight. Nobody gets to make me feel small. I will show up for people I love fully and completely. I will celebrate their wins and support their journeys and be present in their stories. But I will never, not for a relationship, not for a fucking man, and not for anyone's comfort, dim my light that belongs to me. And neither should you. You are the main character. Act like it. This has been Her Take by Laila Jean Yu says. Thank you for listening. If this episode hit for you, and I have a feeling it did, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave us a comment. Follow Her Take on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads. And I will see you next time. Peace.